So on the heels of possibly the lamest return to mixed martial arts ever, of course I'm talking about the return of Henry Cejudo, the champ, because I count the Olympics at 3 different weight classes, who, by the way, never lost his title, but walked away unceremoniously and very oddly at an overly peculiar time, allegedly has come back. Now, before you think I'm starting a rumor, I'm alleging this because I'm quoting as a source Henry Cejudo. He says he's coming back. But Henry throws things at the board in ever which direction that you just never truly know. When is he working? When is he shooting? When is he having some fun with you? And when is he calling somebody out? When is it straight? It's just one of these things that's hard to know. And I don't. But Henry has now called out Max Holloway. That came out of nowhere. I don't remember him calling out Max when Max was champion. And by the way, if you're going up to 145, Henry, why are you calling out Max and not going right after Volkanovski? Well, Henry had his own reasons. And he laid them out. And when Henry starts to lay out his reasons, it at least pulls me in. And I realize I could be a sucker on this, guys, but at least pulls me into the direction of believing he's telling us straight. And when Henry started to give a breakdown of himself versus Max, and he started to talk about the length of Max and how many people, at least within his own social media, are saying that he, meaning Henry, cannot beat Max, that it motivates him. But as he started to give these extra details, it did make me go, man, there might be something to this. There might be something to this, which, by the way, I at least like the theme, okay? I like the theme of Henry coming back at 145. I like the theme that Henry understanding if he were to come back, it is for a contenders match. I like that because something that could stop this train from ever leaving, from ever gaining a little bit of steam is if Henry starts to make as one of his demands, his return is for a title fight. Well, that would make sense and why I would fully understand if Henry was given that opportunity. Nobody complains. I'm only sharing with you that that's not a guarantee for anybody, but particularly for somebody who left and left everybody surprised when he did it, right? I mean, that's just not the world's best way to go. You're now not owed a favor. You're now not the first call that people are going to take as you're trying to get a favor. It's just one of those things. This is a small thing, but it is one of the conflicts that Henry's going to have if his return is predicated on must be a title fight. By the way, 145 pounds, is that direction? Is that the direction that Henry is going? He's talking about Max, and the answer to that would be yes. But a week ago, he was talking about Jan and he was talking about Sterling. As I look at 135 pounds, I mean, things start to get very interesting. By the way, what is Sandhagen doing? And by the way, what is Dillashaw doing? But that's very relevant to ask, even if you're working in Henry Cejudo. Look, if we're going to do a rematch between Jan and Sterling, that defaults with no reasonable explanation to not have to put TJ and Sandhagen together. I would think that both of those guys might have a problem with that just based on principle of, wait a minute, you got Sandhagen over here going, wait a minute, I have fighter of the year. I got knockouts of the year. I've been given bonuses in my last fight. You got TJ coming back going, I'm the champion of the world. And my fights are going to be dictated based on an outcome of somebody else's fight. I mean, I only bring that to you because you do all of a sudden have these moving parts, and it looks like things aren't really quickly coming together. And by the way, Sterling is starting to play the role now. Sterling is now starting to put a little resistance at Jan, which he should be doing. He absolutely should be doing it. Even if it's just fun and it's for attention, he has every intention of taking on Jan. Or moreover, if Sterling goes, you know what? I learned something about Jan and myself in those minutes that we were out there. And one of the first things I learned is to stay away from that guy. If I want to hold this belt, maybe I got to stay away from that guy. Fine. We may never know why he's doing it. I'm just offering for you. It is very wise that he do it. There is no reason to just lay down and accept this whole rematch business without at least getting several weeks worth of headlines out of it. And Jan is a little bit jammed up regardless of what has been presented to you. Regardless of how this has been presented to you, the audience, Jan is in a jam in that the boilerplate forms that he must fill out when he returns to get a privileged license, he's going to have to check the box that he was disqualified. If you are disqualified, it is a built-in question of what was the remedy to this. I'm changing the words, but how did your hearing go? It is a built-in belief by the commission who gives you the form that has the box right there that you have to check, that you attach what the verdict was on a disqualification. What I'm trying to say to you is there has not been any fighter disqualified that does not have a hearing. And somehow this was glossed over. And even if this one is, and I realize that Bob Bennett has been extremely quiet about this topic, but even if it is, Jan gets to where he's going to have to check that box. It's one of these things where license status alone does not guarantee that that fight is going to happen. And if everything that I just said can be easily explained away, if you're Aljo and you don't want it explained away, this is why you bring it to people's attention. And I don't know that there is any comment that Aljo could make that be wrong right now. Because people right now have found a reason to hate him. They're upset with him for even having the title. Now Aljo is out there doing pictures with the belt and a big smiley face. That's what he should have done from Jump Street. He never should have apologized, not one single time. And if you're getting attention by being hated, go with it. What's the difference? What's the difference on why you're getting the attention? If you're getting a headline, keep the headline going. So if Aljo wants to come out and deny the fight, oh, and by the way, particularly if he did it with the straight truth, because the truth really drives people crazy. If he said straight, you know what? The one thing I learned in that fight with Jan is Jan's a big problem for me. And I think I'd like to hold on to this belt for a while. So I'm not going to fight Jan until he reproves himself. Jan, why don't you and TJ fight? Or Jan, why don't you and Sandhagen fight? I mean, that's going to be problematic with the eye of the fan. The fan is going to go absolutely insane, particularly if he puts it in that position. And I think that he should. I don't think that there's any truth to the fact that Sterling and Jan are going to fight the end. At some point, something has to happen with that license status. That could happen with a phone call. That could happen with an email. That could happen with a hearing, which seems extreme. The commission has not called a hearing. You can't beat a dog today for something he did a week ago. But at some point, it still has to be addressed. And that creates an opportunity if you're the other side of the coin who doesn't want to fight him. And you know what? In all fairness, if Aljo didn't like how that fight was going, I'm telling the truth. I'm right now. Aljo doesn't want to fight him and should do everything he can do to stay away from him. The other side of that, before you hate what I'm saying, there's not a whole lot that he could do. One thing about this sport is the top guys fight the top guys. The best guy isn't fighting the best guy. I get it. But in between those fights happening, you have something known as marketing. You have the media. Some of it's going to be straight, some of it's going to be positioning, some of it's going to be trolling. But Aljo has got his name out there in ways that he has never had his name out there. Aljo won a world championship that night. Jan attempted to defend a world championship that night. By the way, these guys weren't the main event. That's not great. If you are the champion of the world, or you're contesting to be the champion of the world, and you're not even the biggest star on the card that night, you have some work to do. And that's okay. There's no insult here. There's just a lesson that you must take with you. And Jan is in a tough spot. And I don't know that anybody has been harder on Jan than me. I also don't know that anybody has been more accurate than me. I have gone as far as to call Jan a cheater. That's very accurate. He wasn't disqualified for doing things that were legal. He was disqualified for doing something that was illegal. But there's other words that I can use. That is a pejorative, and cheater largely does have to do with intent, and Jan had no intent, so I've been a little bit hard on him. But I bring this to you because Jan is also in a position right now. He's in a tough spot too. The fans in broad stroke have decided that Jan was the victim and Aljo was a bad guy for taking and accepting the belt. The ridiculousness of that statement is not something I need you to spell out for me. I fully understand it. But one thing that Jan is going to have a hard time doing, and he has had a very hard time doing, is responding with any level of logic while this is going on. In the world of PR, Jan should have shut his mouth completely. Let the fans who have already decided they hate Sterling continue to hate Sterling, and the adverse effect of that will be to raise Jan. That would be from a PR standpoint. We're not in PR, we're in promotion, so Jan needs to speak up, and he has. He has. But he hasn't spoke up in a way that's serving him or bringing him any closer to this match. That's where things get a little bit tricky. And if Aljo can continue to build interest somewhere else, and by the way, he could have some help that he was never expecting, which is why Henry Cejudo coming back is so relevant. Sterling never would have thought he had a life where he's drowning in the world of social media. He never would have thought he would have found a life raft named Henry Cejudo. But all of a sudden, it has now emerged. It has now presented itself. It's a very interesting spot. It's got to be strategically manipulated the right way. It took Sterling a few days. I think Sterling is now on board. I don't think he ever should have cried or apologized or said sorry to anybody. That's okay that happened. That was real and that was wrong. That's okay. But Sterling is now getting it. Sterling, you're the champion of the world. What do you want to do? Walk around and not have your belt? Have a headline that doesn't say you're the champion of the world. There's nothing you can do about it. Can't give that thing back if you tried. So how is Jan going to play this, and how is Henry Cejudo going to insert himself? And by the way, with the return of Cejudo, the two guys that have been very quiet in this are Dillashaw and Sandhagen, and I wonder why. I just sit back and I wonder why. Henry versus Dillashaw at 135, that works all day long. Henry coming back and going with that works all day long. Sandhagen versus Dillashaw, it works all day. There's no way to do this pairing or this round robin or even this quad the wrong way. There's no way to do it wrong. But when two guys go oddly quiet at the same time, that generally means they've got a deal done. It generally means they're going to fight each other, but they've been told the press release is coming. Don't say anything. Am I right? Is that what's happening? Those are the clues I have. A lot of speculation happening. Henry Cejudo returning, says he's going to return at 145. As of today, I'll come to you tomorrow and talk about Henry. I'm going to tell you a whole nother story. I'm only as good as the information I'm given. The information I've got right now is Henry is returning. He's going to do it at 145. And he's prepared to do it as a contender